Hello again, you're watching Kay Burley at Breakfast. He was once the most powerful man in Hollywood, and it was often said that he'd been thanked in Oscar speeches more times than God. Now the name Harvey Weinstein tends to evoke more anger than appreciation. The sexual abuse allegations against him, which first appeared in the New York Times 2 years ago, helped bring about the Me Too movement. Mr. Weinstein has also denied all accusations of non-consensual sex, but the campaign sparked by the allegations against him prompted thousands of women to come forward with their own accounts of sexual harassment and assault. A new book titled She Said has been published, detailing the work of the two New York Times investigative journalists, I can never say that word, who broke this story. Jodi, Kantor, bless you.
Thank you.
And also Twohey, who are both with us now. Hello to you. Thank you both for joining us on the programme. What was the aim of the book?
What was the aim of the book? Well, we realized that first story that we published in October of 2017 was actually just the beginning. We had been able to connect some of the dots about this alleged predator and how he'd been able to cover his tracks. But since then, in the course of reporting this book, we've been able to bring together so many other pieces of the puzzle. We've been able to pull the curtain back on the machinery that was in place to silence women, these secret settlements that have also legally prohibited women victims from telling their stories. And we've also been able to go more in depth on these sort of gut-wrenching decisions that the brave women who participated in our investigation were facing as they decided whether or not to go on the record.
What sort of challenges did you face along the way?
That's what part of we wanted to show people in the book, because doing an investigation like this is not easy, and these events have come to mean so much to so many people that we're trying to show this step-by-step process of how you uncover these secrets, how you confront a bully. So we want you there with us as we have these initial conversations with actresses, as you meet the sort of secret source. There was a bit of a deep throat figure in the Weinstein investigation, Weinstein's own accountant of 30 years. And throughout the story, the question of who helped and who hindered turns out to be a very surprising one. For example, one of our earliest and most loyal sources was Gwyneth Paltrow. And all of this was off the record for so long, it's only recently that we've been able to reveal in this book what actually happened.
And how challenging was it for you to sort of, lift the veil, if you will? Because he was a very powerful man, as I said in the introduction, thanked more times than God at Oscar ceremonies. He had high-profile lawyers, he had private investigators, and he wasn't having it.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we encountered one challenge after the other in the course of this reporting. I think probably one of the most severe challenges that we faced were these secret settlements that have been used in cases of sexual harassment and sexual assault, not just in the case of Weinstein, but in cases across the country, across the United States, across the UK, in cases of sexual harassment and sexual assault. So, for example, in the summer of 2017, I was able to track down a woman, we kind of considered her the patient zero of the Weinstein story, who had been allegedly sexually assaulted by him in 1990 when she was working as a young assistant in his first company right out of college. And when I knocked on her door, she said, "I've been waiting for somebody to knock on my door for 25 years. But like so many other women who had come forward with allegations over the years, she was legally prohibited from talking to us because of a secret settlement."
Also, I think what many people don't realize is that the UK was ground zero in many ways for our investigation. There's this kind of image of the Weinstein victim as a famous actress in a ball gown, and that's true as far as it goes, but there were women in the UK who were essential to bringing the truth to light. Laura Madden and Zelda Perkins, both former Miramax assistants who worked for Weinstein many, many years ago, both played incredibly brave roles. Zelda Perkins was the first woman to speak to us who had an NDA and who actually showed us her settlement papers, which were so severe. She ended up being the first woman in the world to break her NDA against Weinstein publicly. And
You've got a bit of a cold, haven't you?
Thank you very much. We've been traveling a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And Laura Madden, who lives quietly in Swansea, Wales, was one of the first two women to go on the record with Ashley Judd about Weinstein's experiences. And just to show you Laura's courage, she did it under incredibly difficult circumstances. As our story was growing closer, Laura had just had breast cancer and needed some reconstructive surgery after the breast cancer. And the publication of the story and her surgery ended up pretty much coinciding, and she still went on the record. That's how brave she was.
Wow. I mean, it gathered, this Me Too campaign that came off the back of your investigation, gathered a momentum that was difficult to anticipate, a Pandora's box of sexual harassment, as it's been described. It involved hundreds of men in every walk of life. It empowered women to come forward and say, Me Too, quite literally with the hashtag. But what do you say to those who suggest that it emasculated young men who were caught up in this sort of tsunami of Me Too fury and didn't feel that, you know, they felt that they were in some way being, as I said, emasculated?
Well, you're absolutely right that it was within days of our story being published that our phones and our emails were flooded with women who are coming forward with their own stories of sexual harassment and abuse. That happened not just at the New York Times, but in news organizations across the United States and around the world. And also you had so many victims who just basically took to social media under the Me Too hashtag. And so it was another reason that we wanted to write this book, she said, was because we wanted to go beyond the breaking of the Weinstein story into the year that followed as it became more complicated and more confusing. We really feel like there are three pressing and yet unresolved questions that have left everybody feeling frustrated. One, what is the scope of behavior that's under scrutiny? Are we only talking about serious allegations of rape and sexual assault? Or are we talking about some of the more nuanced, uncomfortable interactions that men and women had? And also, how far back are we going? Are we talking about allegations that can go back to, say, the 1980s? Secondly, what is our process for vetting these complaints? You know, we walk readers through all of the specific due diligence that we do in investigative journalism, but for HR departments and for the court of public opinion, what are the standards that we're applying to determine what actually happened? And finally, you know, what about the question of accountability? It's much easier to insist on accountability than it is to assign it. So we have found that those three questions oftentimes get basically jumbled together and leave everybody feeling like there has not been kind of adequate reforms and answers to make sure that everybody feels like they're being treated fairly.
Understood. And to that end, talking about fair treatment, Harvey Weinstein, of course, has not been found guilty of anything at this stage. His court case is at the beginning of next year. And he's still out and about in New York, living his life.
He is. And, you know, this trial is a very uncertain thing because both the prosecution and the defense have had problems coming into trial. So, you know, many people assume that he'll be convicted because the number of women who have come out against him is so overwhelming.
However.
And I would urge everyone to just wait and see what happens and, you know, not make any predictions, because if you think of the...
Or assumptions, we have to say, you know, as innocent until proven guilty.
Absolutely. And if you look at the ocean of complaints against Harvey Weinstein, most of those are for sexual harassment, and you can't go to jail in the UK or the US for sexual harassment. It's illegal under civil law, not criminal law. There's a smaller island of rape and assault allegations against Weinstein, but it's really only 2 women's stories that are at the basis of this trial. We still don't know everything about these stories, and just remember that these sexual assault cases are very hard to prove in court.
Yeah, and it's for a jury to decide whether or not he is guilty. In the meantime, he has his liberty in New York. And you have your book out, which is out soon?
It's out now.
It's out
now, fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you very much indeed for coming in to speak to us on the programme, and I wish you better.
Thank you.
I'll be trying. Those aeroplanes are a nightmare, aren't they?